Cage the elephant, yeah.
That's almost.
that part. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our June 7th work session. Up first today, we have non-union citywide pay scale approval and non-union HPD command pay scale approval.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Don.
How's everybody doing?
You're amazing.
Good.
Speak for us all.
So the first one I'm going to cover is the citywide pay scale. And we've talked about it off and on throughout the budget season, but the scale's been increased by the programmed 3%. The total cost of the changes to the citywide scale is $300.
I was like,
CIA is
I was like, oh.
6 years of
Yeah.
The cost of the changes is $340,715. $242,860 of that amount is attributed to the general fund, and the rest is spread out over the utilities. The scale is attached, and I'll take any questions you have. Okay, then I'll move on. The next is the non-union Hagerstown Police Department command pay scale. As you know, the pay scale at HPD is a little bit different. That we move those folks off of the citywide scale, put them on their own scale so that they could maintain a 10% difference because they were having so much trouble getting supervisors and that sort of thing. I won't debate that the other scale is just as bad, but we've done what we could to fix the HPD scale at this point. The total cost of the changes to that scale, also attachment 1, is $148,834. And any questions you have, Joey can take. Any
Do you
questions?
guys have any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right up next, HPD conversion of 2 part-time positions to 1 full-time position.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I'm here today to talk to you about with a position to create a full-time position. So what we have is Steve McGackey worked part-time, worked our front desk for quite a few years after he retired from HPD. He's officially retired last month and enjoying himself immensely. So with that, we also had Cole, who's our part-timer that would work the later day times. So what I'm asking to do is take both those positions, merge them into one full-time, bring Cole on full-time. He's doing a fantastic job. He's been highly recommended by Steve McGackey and Tamara that works in the front desk area, and along with the other guys love what he's doing. He's doing a great job. With the employee market right now, trying to find another part-time position to work 25 hours a week is just probably not going to happen. Not at the level of the people we need to work the front desk. So we've gotten lucky with Cole, and I'd like to reward him by bringing him on full-time. He's very eager to do so, and I think he'll be a lifetime employee here at City of Hagerstown.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Sounds good.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Conversion district overlay at 245 North Potomac Street.
We keep moving like this, we can be done in 10 minutes.
This is a follow-up after the May 25th public hearing, where we didn't have any input beyond the owner letting us know he was in the audience. We had input at the Planning Commission meeting from a nearby resident, which I shared with you at a prior meeting. But otherwise, we have received nothing new. You know that the Planning Commission's recommendation is to move forward with this conversion district overlay zone for 245 North Potomac Street, with the recommendation that there be a condition placed that the building lot and the parking lot be merged, so the parking lot always stays with this property and doesn't get sold off. So we know that the 7 apartments and these 2 commercial spaces have a parking lot. So they recommend that. And then also agreed with the Historic District Commission's recommendation to require some type of landscaping, which would occur at the site plan stage. Right now, it's basically pavement from the parking lot to the front of the building, and so they're suggesting that be broken up a little bit. And that could be worked out with the Planning Commission. Because after the overlay is approved, the next step is the site plan.
So, are you guys good with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still.
That is it. All right. So then it'll be on the agenda for introduction of the ordinance later this month.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, conversion district overlay at 535 Summit Ave.
Good thing I didn't wait for my scheduled time to come down. Okay, this is the conversion overlay for the Surrey School. We did receive some additional materials after the meeting closed within the 10-day period. They were included in your packet that you received for this meeting. As far as I know, we have received no additional comment beyond what is there. This is a slightly different. We haven't had one of these conversion districts in decades, literally. Local conversions is what we've been getting, like the one we had before. The standards are a little bit different. These apply to larger properties. But you took your testimony and you have the commentary, so I guess I'm here to take your direction on how you want to proceed.
I think it's a fantastic project, and a great reuse of a empty building that's, so large that no one else is gonna come in.
When, obviously, the biggest thing brought up at the meeting and then through correspondence was how much parking are they gonna provide on site? So we had a number of different iterations of plans presented at the meeting. Do we know what the final tally is? Like, once it leaves this table and goes to the planning commission, I realize they can make minor changes, but I feel like that's what people expressed to us. So I'd like to be able to know what that number is.
The number is the number of spaces that are reflected in the official exhibit. When you had your meeting, the applicants provided several alternatives that they had considered that they brought to you for discussion purposes. That was the first time staff had actually seen those. Actually, we didn't even see them at the meeting either. But those were provided as I understand it by the applicants as kind of backup or justification for the plan that they have actually submitted as part of the official application. The exact number is, stand by for that. Somewhere around 60, if I remember correctly.
So they're still going to have this lot right here?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think that for me was the primary confusion, was that
Yeah,
lot.
because we had talked a little bit
Right,
about
about
Yeah.
moving that. As long as that's there, then I feel like that gives the larger number. Because it was anywhere from like down to 58 up to like 70, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
And ultimately, there are, as I put in my memo, there's multiple ways that the parking issue could be dealt with here. There are built-in relief processes through the Planning Commission and the BZA, but you also do have the authority, if you feel it's important enough, to put conditions of your own on it.
So I guess for me, I don't want to be presented here today and then us give the formal approval to some plan that looks like this. And then a plan that ultimately gets approved by the planning commission has, a quarter of this gone. Because there's this assertion you can meet it on street. And I've lived in that neighborhood, I just don't think that assertion is correct. And I think people spoke to that fairly plainly. And so,
Okay, the drawing that's here is, shows 60 spaces.
and that's this one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to interject, if I may. They've approached me about using some of our stormwater incentive funds that we have in our stormwater protection program to help fund some of the stormwater issues that they have to deal with here, to lessen the amount of water that's leaving the site, to clean the water and all those kind of things. So that is one way that they're accomplishing this additional parking. So that'll be coming back to this board, to the mayor and council, in July to discuss whether or not they can use that incentive program.
And that was another 14 spaces, wasn't it, something like
Yeah,
that?
exactly. It's part of the reason they eliminated them, because they couldn't figure out how to
Couldn't
solve the
deal with
stormwater issue.
Are you guys good with this?
I mean, as long as this is what we're approving, I'm good with it, yeah.
Looks like 70 spaces on this page.
Yeah, I just know this had the most, so, but the other iterations were not.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Okay.
Okay. We will have material in for your packet at the end of the month then.
Thank you. All right, fiscal year 23 DHCD grant applications.
Trying to figure out what just got approved. Which exhibit? We'll work that out later. All right, anyway, it's that time of year where we're invited to apply to the Department of Housing and Community Development at the state for community legacy or strategic demolition fund grants. And every year for the last 22, however many years they've had the program, the city has applied. And this year, we thought about what do we have on our plans for capital projects. And so we were recommending that perhaps we pursue money to help with the funding of some projects that we have decided that we're gonna be moving forward with. One being the M&T Bank Adaptive Reuse Project for city offices, might help reduce our obligation if we were able to get some state money. Then the field house, pre-development activities, site work, that could help reduce our, city bond fund obligation if we were able to get some state money. And then the down payment assistance program, that if we ask for some more money, that might free up money for other programs as well within the Invest Hagerstown. So that's what we were recommending, that we pursue all three from the Strategic Demolition Fund program, which is a less competitive program than Community Legacy. Community Legacy is a lot more flexible. Strategic Demolition Fund is for pre-construction stuff, and most people are looking for whatever they can get. So that's why we thought strategically, we might have a better chance going through this program. Although our requests are large, we'll see what happens, but we're requesting $250,000 to help with the M&T Bank project for the fire sprinklers and the elevators, that kind of thing. And then for the field house, pre-development site work kind of work, ask for $250,000 for that as well. And then down payment assistance program, ask for $75,000, and we'll match it with $50,000 from our Invest Hagerstown program. So that's what we're recommending. And the deadline for submittal is July 13th. And if you're in support, we'll have a resolution on your agenda at the end of this month that we have to include with the application.
Are you guys good with that?
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Invest Hagerstown proposed guideline changes in fiscal year 23 funding levels.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
All right, so I'm basically here to talk everything Invest Hagerstown in this regard, provide a update on the current fiscal year 22 investment to date with this, a couple of proposed changes to the guidelines for Invest Hagerstown, as well as go over essentially the buckets, the funding levels for each of the individual programs for fiscal year 2023. So first up, with the proposed changes to the Invest Hagerstown, under the facade grant, it currently does not allow commercial signs for businesses. That's one thing I would like to see if we can change and have better professional signs for our businesses in the downtown to help incentivize that. If you go down the street right now, you might see some makeshift signs, a good bit of temporary signs now and then that get right up to the deadline that they're allowed to have and try to switch those out or what have you. This way we can try to make sure we have, you're going down the street, you're driving down, you're walking down, and that's the first thing you see that really grabs your attention to a business and makes you want to go in. The proposal that I'm looking at here is a one-to-one match grant, just like for the current facade grant, for a minimum grant award of $250 to a maximum grant award of $1,500. So that will help incentivize signs anywhere from $500 to $3,000 in cost. The next update I'm looking to do is for the rental rehabilitation grant. We have received quite a bit of feedback from landlords at the moment that the current $7,500 Invest Hagerstown grant for that is not enough for them to even look to apply. And with the feedback that we've been seeing, as well as a large number of larger rental property projects coming into play, we are looking at possibly increasing the award to a maximum of $20,000 based on multi-unit and/or high-cost redevelopment. And similar to our current rental rehab grant, it's a 2-to-1 match from the developer. So this would help take care of projects that range from $22,500, which is the current requirement, to a max of $60,000 plus. It would kind of model our citywide grant in this regard, but for rental rehabilitation projects in general. And projects that are looking to receive $7,500 or more would need to require, projects that would look to have more than $7,500 in a grant back to them would require 2 or more units within a single property or parcel, so we can get the multi-unit renovations taken care of. And then the next one is to our homeownership down payment assistance grant. During the review committee, we had discussed a proposed cap of 125% of the average home sale price within city limits, which as of April was set at $274,953. We want to make sure that we are incentivizing our first-time home buyers, and it's typically around that mark. So the proposed change will be capping it at a home no more than $343,000 with the current market price, for example. And of course, that will fluctuate if the housing market goes up or down. And then the last change we are looking to do is help make additional businesses eligible for our Invest Hagerstown grants in general, by removing tattoo parlors as an ineligible business to receive Invest Hagerstown funds. The current list of ineligible businesses include pawn shops, gun shops, massage parlors, adult video and book shops, adult entertainment facilities, tanning salons, check cashing facilities, gambling facilities, tattoo parlors, and liquor stores. If there's any kind of questions for any of those proposed changes, please let me know. I'd be happy to address them.
I'm good with them.
Perfect.
The,
Sorry?
the facade grant section, I'm looking at the sheet that has the couple that I guess have been completed. So the investment is the total investment, right? Regardless of what we put forward.
Correct.
That's the total investment.
Correct.
It's that, in other words, ours is still, our ceiling was still there.
Correct.
Okay.
So, jumping forward a little bit, the current FY '22, we had a investment bucket, the funding level of $26,500, and we were able to utilize the full funding amount. And we have some people who are holding off their applications until the next fiscal year begins as well. Any questions or concerns regarding the sign change? Okay. So jumping forward to the funding levels for the next fiscal year. The city center redevelopment grant has not changed with $500,000 in that funding level, that bucket essentially. The citywide redevelopment grant is set at $150,000. Homeownership grant program, we are looking at $120,000. Rental property rehabilitation grant is $55,000. And the commercial sign and facade grant, we are looking at a total of $30,000. Those are in regards to the increased revenues coming into the Invest Hagerstown program itself, for a total of $855,000 for the coming fiscal year. Any kind of questions on the current funding levels that we're proposing for this?
That's good to me.
All right, perfect. And then to go into the FY 2022 summary to date, so we have expended a total of $862,665.72 from the current fiscal year. This is in regards to the regular allocated funds, as well as unutilized or forfeited funds that have come back into the program itself. And as a result of that $862,665.72, we saw a total investment of $12,308,286.54. We're looking at a total of 97 jobs being created in the next 2 years, a total amount of apartments created in the amount of 36, and 39 existing apartments being renovated.
I'm putting that on Facebook.
Do you have the total number of houses that have been reoccupied?
The total number of houses that have been occupied?
Yeah.
Via our homeownership program specifically?
Well, the portion of this that speaks to that, yeah.
Yes, so, under the overall, breakdown, page, what's the page right after that, essentially? We have a total amount of 16 residents that we were able to assist. So in addition to the 15 that we had funding allocated for, we were able to move some funding around once we, had the authority to allocate an additional 2251 to a 16th homeowner. So it wasn't a full $7,500 grant that we would provide them, but it was at least able to provide them some down payment relief.
And that's just for this,
That's just for this current fiscal year, correct. And with the proposed,
So with Invest
sorry,
Hagerstown, we have 16 people buying out.
correct,
We got 12 times the return of our money for the $12,308,000.
correct.
Cool.
And we have plenty more projects lined up for the next fiscal year as well that are already in communications with us.
Nice.
I'd say so.
It's really good. Yep.
Thank you
Creative
for those.
apartments created, apartments renovated, wow.
Do you guys have any other questions or anything?
What's that? We're staying busy. We're definitely keeping at it. And if you guys don't have any kind of changes or anything like that for the information in the packet, we can go ahead and move forward with getting the guideline updates ready to go and set forth to you. All right.
Thank you very much.
Michelle was putting a bug in my ear, so I'm coming up. So just to clarify on the buckets, that the $120,000 for home ownership, $50,000 of that would be the match toward the community legacy grant that Kathy just reviewed. And then there would be $70,000 that would be unrestricted and not tied to the community legacy. So we just wanted to reinforce that we would be using a portion of that as leverage match for the community legacy program.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, up next, we have code amendments to chapters 238 and 240.
I'll try again. I'm going to pass these around. There's lots of extras there. This contains the numbers. Oops, here's another one. The data that was requested that will hopefully allow us to, one, know that we're on, hopefully know that we're on the right path to move forward. I'll wait till everybody gets one.
Thank you.
So the spreadsheet, and it's a lengthy spreadsheet, and I only included inside customers to give you a snapshot of how I was evaluating the data and what the end results of that data were, those end results are. So this spreadsheet represents all inside industrial, commercial, and residential commercial customers. All customers inside that are required to, that are reviewed annually for allocation, of course, required to purchase allocation, and this list also represents the customer base that was assigned allocation when the allocation policy went into effect. So if you look across the top, of course, you have the account number, and then the original water allocation. I will tell you, none of this was incorporated into our billing system back then, none of the, original allocations, except that they were assigned to the account. But, so I was the only data I had to work with, because our current billing system only goes back, I believe, to 2009, something like that?
Yeah.
And so the data, when we went into Munis, when the HP 3000 finally breathed its last breath, I can't go back and access some of that really old historical data. So I had to use spreadsheets that were, that I found in the files associated with when the allocation policy, benefit fee policy went into place. So in the second column is the original water allocation that was identified in those spreadsheets. The 2020 allocation that currently resides on the account is sitting there. The total use in 2020, the average use in 2020, and then of course there's the number of bills, and we use that to kind of to calculate the average, because sometimes properties transfer and that sort of thing, and so bill numbers can change. Under the blue headers, one of the things that I looked at is, was there an increase in allocation on any of these accounts that were originally assigned allocation? And the answer to that is, of course, yes. Where you see a negative number in that column is where the original allocation was actually less than what was identified in the working spreadsheet. But you can see that the vast majority of the allocations were consistent with and matched. So, but where you see a negative in that first blue column, that just represents a discrepancy in what staff was, I think, thinking and what they actually implemented. It was way before my time. So, in the second blue column, it's the 2020 allocation minus the original. Then, of course, the next column is the 2020 allocation minus the current. The column headers in orange, I had to choose a number. So I said, okay, if we're going to take back allocation, if we're going to reduce the amount of allocation that was assigned, where's a good starting point? So I started at 10%, and I stayed at 10%. Because it seemed like a good number. So I took the original allocation minus the 10%, and then, of course, I also looked at the original less 10% minus the 2020 usage, and then I calculated allocation take back. The assumption I made when I was doing this was that we have to leave, we can't take anybody to zero. So the other assumption I made is that we'll leave 5 EDUs, 1,000 gallons, on any of the accounts that we're considering taking back allocation that was assigned. So I did a 5 EDU correction, and you can see that in doing that, it all boils down to that tiny little block with has red ink in. It appears as though we would be able to take back on our inside residential customers, our non-residential customers, 416,000, approximately 416,000 gallons per day. There's a total of 242 accounts that I looked at. The account total was 906. And then 27 and 24% respectively. I also looked at, okay, of the ones that are above, 1,000 gallons or above, how many accounts is that? And that's 100 accounts. And so that brings that percentage down to about 11% if we just look at the 100 accounts that we're saying we can take back. And this would be for water and for wastewater on inside customers. On outside customers, the data is very similar on water. It's very different on wastewater because we don't have nearly as many outside wastewater customers. But as opposed to overloading you with all of the data for all of the customers, I reviewed about 1,900 accounts. I compared 1,900 accounts where allocation was assigned, pulling all of the data out of the system. The spreadsheets started with about 51,000 rows of data and about 20 columns of data to sort it all out, to get it down to this level where, this is what we have, this is what I think we can do. So to that end, looking at, the allocation or the reallocation of our capacity, if we go higher than 10%, then the number of customers is going to drop off that we can actually take, remove allocation from. You can see it drops off pretty quickly. You've got just shy of 2 pages of accounts that we could consider with leaving 5 EDUs on the account. And so that, from my perspective, that 10% in that 5 EDU actually works fairly well. Of course, if you want me to look at different percentages and how they impact that take back, I can certainly do it, but I can tell you if I would be concerned if we reduce the allocation to less than 1,000 gallons, less than 5 EDUs on non-residential customers.
Right, because something could happen. Something
Right.
change.
The vast majority of our customers are less than, they're less than, 5 EDUs, which you can see from the data. I probably did equally. It also, in trying to look at how we implement this in code, when we start talking about the potential for reallocation of capacity or transfer of capacity or transfer of allocation, I have to have, I'm going to say, a defendable, something defendable that I can actually take this and say, this would work if we applied it to reallocation or transfer of allocation. So that 5 EDUs is a nice, I see it as a nice launching point to look at, reallocation or transfer of allocation. I'm just gonna, this is just, one thing I can't do, that I did not incorporate in here, that I wasn't comfortable putting in here, is we have a number, we have inactive accounts, of course, and so I pulled just the industrial, because that's where your bigger numbers are on the inactive accounts, and looked at them on inside and outside. So you can see that in the third column from the last, allocation, the column didn't split well, but allocation gallons per day, you can see on these inactive accounts that there's opportunity, like on Clear Spring Road, that's the tannery. You can see what their allocation is. It's huge. And the other thing, that I would point out is that I also included the account start date. It's reasonable for me to assume that the tannery purchased additional allocation. I don't know that for sure because it wasn't in the spreadsheet, because the account start date associated with this, which I know is not necessarily accurate, is 2006. So I would have to do some additional digging and research there to see, and that's kind of, looking in the financial system and say, have we received any checks for allocation over what period of time? But there is additional opportunity on these inactive accounts. You can see the, the Pangborn properties, and so forth. Meritus, all of the, inside. Service status I is inside, industrial. District I is inside. So you've got industrial, inside, and inactive in those three Is. So you can see that there's a lot of allocation on the Meritus properties as well. So there is some additional opportunity. I did not delve down into the inactive accounts. I wanted it to just right now reflect what's active in our system. So, well, before I move on, is there any questions? Is this, this data can be pulled together any number of ways. It can be sorted any number of ways. Is the data set that's in front of you, are you okay with this approach? Are you okay with the 10% and the 5 EDUs?
Is all of this, this big packet, that's all the non-residential accounts in the city? That's what I'm looking at,
Yes.
right?
Active, yes.
Active, not the inactive.
Right.
You're saying the inactive are on this sheet?
Inactive industrial are on this sheet.
Not all of the inactive non-residential are on this sheet?
No, I just brought this as an example for the inactives.
Okay. I want to understand the 10% you're talking about clearly.
Okay.
Is what you're saying is that the 10% is a cushion that you're applying to keep, or are you saying a 10% is the amount you feel comfortable in shaving off?
That's the amount that what I wanted to do.
That's the buffer.
I know, but I'm trying to figure out whether
it's the amount I want to shave off, essentially.
Okay, it's not the amount that you're gonna, in other words, you're not looking at the 1.7 million and going, I want a cushion of 170. You're looking at the totality and saying, I feel comfortable shaving 10% off.
Yes,
The top of everybody.
right, and,
Okay.
and I also.
To generate that additional estimated amount.
Yeah, and that 10% also, in doing that,
Okay.
it also, it's 10% of the assigned allocation where folks are under or have not, where it's still available, it's not being used by the customer, so
It hasn't been being used.
yes,
So do either of these numbers represent that 10%, the 416 or the 1.7?
the 416.
Represents the 10%?
The
the
10%
1.7
of what
is
I
the
can take,
total.
yes.
And
The
that
1.7 million
doesn't
is the
include
assigned
this.
allocation. No, that's not.
Okay, so you're saying the 416 is the number you're comfortable with shaving off. The 1.7 is the total flat number if you were to just take everybody and do it in totality.
The 1.7 is the total assigned allocation. The 10% is what I'm comfortable in, considering that as a
Shaving off
recommendation,
that.
shaving off.
That.
And it would be roughly 100 accounts.
I got you.
Looking at approximately 100 accounts and maintaining 5 EDUs on, a minimum of 5 EDUs on all
On
accounts.
any one of those accounts.
Yeah.
So these two sheets together equate to well over 1.2 million gallons.
I believe when when you add the outside and the inactive accounts, you're probably, over 1 million gallons.
That's making the assumption, though, on inactive accounts, that you're taking them down to some bare minimum. In other words, you can't look at the 19 acres, right, I think it's 19 acres that make up the old hospital property, roughly? And shave, and take
Strip
that
all of it.
down, right.
That's why they're not included in this, because I don't.
That's why you just gave us this sample
Yeah, I
sheet.
don't have, I can't really pull a relevant
you.
historical use on many of the inactive accounts.
Because as soon as redevelopment happens, there's gonna be an allocation put back on it.
Sure.
Yeah, and so, one of the things we can consider with inactive accounts is we could say, okay, we're gonna reduce them by
Right,
50%,
you got to
but
look at them differently.
we're gonna have to, yeah.
I got you. I agree, I'm with you.
I don't have the data I need to do what we need to do there, so that's why I didn't lump them into this.
You're not comfortable enough yet to know what that could be. You'd have to look and say, hey,
It's a
let's
guess.
take the old hospital property, let's say it's zoned R3, I'm just guessing. Let's say, then you say, okay, R3 can produce 150 residential units, let's say, that's its highest and best reuse. Then you can reassign a number and say, I gotta keep at least 45,000 for that 150 units that I think, and then you can shave off the other 100,000 and say, you know what,
Yeah.
you can put that back in the kitty, so to speak.
I think what I would be comfortable in saying is that, we could leave the allocation reside there, but as part of the site plan approvals for redevelopment, we don't say, you have this much. Instead, we say, what do you need? Which is what we should have done with the old Cascade.
Right.
We should have said, what do you need? Because, they have way more allocation. I think it's 108,000 and they're planning on using 30,000. And so we kind of have to, on accounts that are inactive, moving forward, we're gonna have to rethink how we work through the approval process, not strip them of the allocation prematurely.
But not give them
but-
scads more than they.
But
actually need.
understand, we can say,
Or the ability to market it.
Right.
right. We're only gonna, just like we do on a new development, we will only sell you what you need. So we're only gonna give you what you need, the rest of it goes back into our pot.
Yeah.
That would be the recommendation I would be most comfortable with on the inactive.
I think that's a great plan.
One of the things that I also want to, one of the questions I have, right now, we have, our customer classifications are, of course, commercial, industrial, residential, commercials that currently are reviewed and assessed additional allocation bills annually should they meet the criteria. We have a lot of residential multi-customers that pay allocation one time, never have to come back to us and pay any additional allocation regardless of what their usage might be. We do not, mostly, the reason it kind of resides in code, because RC, residential commercial, has a commercial component to it. RM doesn't necessarily have a commercial component to it by definition, but it clearly is a business. So one of the things I need to know from this body is do you want to leave RM the way it is, and it kind of be, if you will, just whatever you pay up front is all you're ever going to have to pay, regardless of how much water you use, or do you want to put some standard in place for residential multi? And you could put it in place if it's 10 or more units, or, because there's residential multi that might be 2 units or 4 units. A house that's been divided. It's kind of, if you will, a bit of a weak spot, so I would need direction. It would be something completely new as to what you would want to see on residential multi. And maybe we put, because sometimes it's hard to get units outside of municipal limits, maybe we put, a threshold, hold on it of 10 EDUs, and that would do the same thing as 10 units for RM. So as long as they're under 10 EDUs, we would never assess additional allocation, but they would be subject to it.
I think your analysis is gonna vet out that number. In other words, I think you're gonna look at the RM, you're gonna go, okay, there's a breaking point, whether it's above 6 units or above 10 units, you're gonna see a clear breaking point, no differently, and I was trying to equate this chart to like trash service. Like, for the average citizen to maybe follow along the complexity of these numbers, to say, okay, if Bob sets out his trash on Monday night and pays X amount for that trash service, it's different than if, a building with 6 units in it, setting out trash on Monday night, there's a volume differential, and so I think when you look at those numbers, and I think somebody's got to go back and look at those, they're gonna find out that at some point there's a clear breaking point where you get above 8 and the number is going to be different.
Yeah, there's about inside and outside between 4,000 and 5,000 RM accounts, to put it into perspective. We have a total of about 31,000 accounts, so they represent a decent percentage. So I can go ahead and complete, I didn't want to invest my time in completing that analysis unless you guys wanted to look at it. I will tell you, it's hours of work. I'm more than happy to do it. I just want to make sure that I'm working in the right direction. And I agree, I think that number will present itself. My gut feeling is, based on all of the numbers I've looked at, my gut feeling is it's gonna be right around 10 EDUs.
Let me ask you, what, and I realize that, you can't claw back all this allocation that's on this sheet because you wanna use some for redevelopment, I get that. But, using Kristen's example, the old Meredith site, it's over 350 gallons per day. And, 350,000 gallons per day, that's a lot.
That's what I say, I think you'll be able to look at the zoning and say, here's what I think it's
You can
highest
use
and best, and you're never gonna reach that number.
use the highest level.
Right.
Yeah,
My whole thing on this, when we had the conversation originally, was we need to get control of what our allocations are here, our allocation that's left over, what that real number looks like.
right.
We just don't know because of all this.
And one of the things on the inactive accounts, and like I said, we would do an industrial, commercial, and RC when we did this, is we can move the allocation from, if you will, from the meter, because it kind of resides on the meter in the billing system, and we can move it to a different location, and it would be called reserved allocation. And it's reserved, but it's no longer, it wouldn't come out in our reports as assigned, and it would still be sitting on those accounts. But it wouldn't be part of our end data sets, and then we would handle it just like we would a brand-new customer coming on board. Is we, as part of the site plan process, the redevelopment process, we would identify what they needed, put that amount on, if you will, on the meter, and then the rest of the allocation that was in reserve, we would move it out. We'd say, okay, we've given you what you needed from this point, we're not gonna give you the sky, we're gonna give you what you need. Just like we do with new customers on the system, we only will sell them what they need, what they believe they need. And they're usually fairly conservative, because it's a lot of money, so they don't typically ask for a whole lot more than what, they don't ask for a whole lot more. And we've seen that with the developments on Basil Boulevard and, the warehouse developments. They're coming in somewhere between 2,500 and 5,000 or 6,000 gallons a day. They're not requesting 20 or 30,000 gallons. They don't want to pay, they don't want to pay for it if they don't need it. And we don't want to sell it to them if they don't need it. So we could move it from the meter and onto, if you will, onto the account, keep it on the account, and then manage it that way. And then we would know exactly what we have in reserve and where that reserve resides. I'd make sure it was if you will, a searchable cell, if you will, or in our database.
My concern with that is somebody sees that on the account as if it's for that property. To me, I'd rather it just come off in total
Well,
and be put back in the city's allocation. And we're the owner proprietor of the entire process. I would rather it just come back in the pot. And I am sure among those inactive, you can configure some reasonable number to remain, but and the hospital property is a prime example. There is no building there anymore. You know what I mean? So there is nothing to assign that number to. It's just a vacant piece of commercial property. And so I don't think it should have an account. at this point.
Or allocation
I mean-
residing on the
I mean, heck,
account.
the last, you know, iteration of discussion of that property was it was gonna be a park of some sort, you know what I mean? And so I just, yeah, the tannery used to have, what, a 1,000,000-gallon sewer allocation separately from the state, and they no longer have that. So, you know, half those buildings are down, I just, I don't, I don't think it should stay with the accounts.
Okay, I mean, we can certainly work in that direction, but I will make sure we maintain good records of everything we do, so that if we ever need to research it, I'll make sure that Kathy's and Jill's group also have access to that information in the event that we ever need to.
And I think that the
Research
RM
it.
is sort of a later bite at the apple. In other words, I think to try and do that now, yeah, I think you focus on the non-residential, i.e. commercial and inactives, get a handle on that number, plug that in, and then later on, look at the RM, you know,
So these,
as a second effort.
the scenario, I'm gonna say, the recommendations I have in here would be looking at taking back 10%, maintaining 5 EDUs. If everybody's good with that approach, okay. And we will do that with, you know, it'll be water and wastewater. You'll have 2 sets of, if you will, numbers, 2 sets of data. Before we reach out to any of the customers with a letter saying, hey, this is what we're gonna do, because code requires that we do that, I will make sure that everybody has in their hands that list, so that in the event that anybody is contacted, you know exactly what we're looking at. So I'll have all of that ready for you. So the other thing that we need to talk about
The code amendment.
is, well, the code amendment, but the problem is, you know, I keep tweaking it, but we've shifted around left or right. So I came up with some different ideas, or maybe new ideas, for transfer of allocation. One of the things, just right out of the gates, that I would like to do is, instead of requiring non-residential customers to buy allocation at 200 gallons a time, 1 EDU, is to reduce that back to 100, because if they use 100 gallons or more above their allocation, we bill them for that. We bill them for 200, so we give them 100 more they're paying for 100 more gallons than what they actually technically need, that they may never use. And it also inflates the bill. So anywhere it says 200 for a non-residential customer, I would like to back that up to 100. I still think we need, for residential customers, for individual residential customers, it'd be 1 EDU. For RMs, I'm okay also with RMs for 100 gallons per unit if they're served by a master meter. McCleary Hills requested that. We've had where they have master meters, where you have big residential developments, and they typically only use about 100 to 125 gallons a day, but we're kind of forcing 200 on them. So where it's residential multi with a master meter, I would also recommend that the minimum is 100 gallons per
So
EDU.
your primary would be 100, and then
They would-
whatever they use above, they would
Yeah.
do it for 127 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I would,
makes mathematical sense.
well, you know, to some extent, you know, every gallon kind of counts. So to kind of get out of that over allocation philosophy. So what I played with transfer of allocation is that it would only be permitted when there was greater than 1,000 gallons per day on the account, you know, residing on the account. So and this is, transfer of allocation is strictly for residential, commercial, industrial, and commercial. So, you know, that same 1,000 gallons that we said we wanted residing on any account at any given time once the allocation was purchased, to me, that seems like a good threshold before we would even consider any transfer of allocation. It ties it back to this basis. If, of course, if the allocation was less than that, no transfer of allocation would be authorized. The other thing that I think would be important in this language is that we don't want to be in a position where we're allowing allocation just to be transferred all over the place. So I would be inclined to say we would authorize a one-time allocation transfer per property. That way, you know, every time, if you have somebody that owns 20 or 30 properties, every time they get an allocation bill, we don't want them to say, well, I want to transfer 100 gallons from this place and 100 gallons from that place and somewhere else. So we need to be careful. We need to make sure it's manageable. So I would be inclined to say, you know, it's a one-time get out of jail, you know, allocation transfer. I would also, if somebody requests an allocation transfer, if at some point in the future they come back to us through the amendments that we're going to put in code for, if you need more allocation, it's not guaranteed, you have to come back. They would need to follow that procedure. It would be in 238G3 once we amend code. Follow that procedure, and they would need to pay whatever the rate was that was in place at that time. For redevelopment, and this is one that's come our way numerous times, if a property's being redeveloped and has multiple lots on that property, I think this is a good place to say, okay, if this is one property, you know, you got one site, we're going to allow you to move the allocation. That one site's going to end up being 3 lots or 4 lots. We're going to allow you to move that allocation as part of your site plan approval, so that we're not forcing you into buying allocation for multiple lots because you technically only have it on one. So for redevelopment, I'd like to put language in there that allows us to do that. This is not in code, and we said we would save it for a little bit later, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. We've talked about before where for water, the cost per allocation is the same for an inside customer as it is an outside customer. When we change that, if allocation is being transferred from inside to outside, if we're not going to say inside has to stay inside and outside has to stay outside, I believe we should charge that differential to put it on the outside once we adopt a benefit fee for outside customers, just like we have a benefit fee for inside and outside for sewer. So what we would do in sewer right now is if you're an outside customer, if you're an inside customer, you want to transfer to an outside property, my recommendation would be is if you meet all of the other criteria, you also have to pay that differential. You don't get the benefit of having that allocation at an inside rate. And I think we need to do that on the water side too, but we have to update the benefit fees. But I would propose that we put that in place now in section 240 of city code because the differential already exists. And then when we put the differential in, when we adopt rate amendments or a new rate schedule, and that'll, you know, be within the next year, then we would go ahead and amend 238 to say the same thing. So for transfer of allocation, trying to think outside of the box, you know, use some of the criteria that I used in pulling the data set together, that's essentially what I've come up with for transfer of allocation. The other things we've talked about, as far as enforcing the redevelopment or just taking additional allocation without applying for it. We've already talked about that, and everybody was on board with that. So if everybody's on board with these things, I'll go ahead and do all of the red lines, and I'll get them, I'll get them out to Scott and Donna, and we can go over the red lines. I didn't want to do the red lines prior to the meeting because we've changed them numerous times, and I didn't want to confuse things. So,
Are you guys good with those changes?
Yeah.
okay, so we have. Okay, well, I have a path forward for the clawback, and I have a path forward for the code amendments for both 240 and 238, so, yeah, transfer of allocation, that'll go in both 238 and 240. There'll be a few different, couple things different in the sewer because the benefit fee differential already exists, but I'll get all of those together for you. I did not include customer names, just so you're aware on this, because I just kind of didn't think that would be a good thing on a document that could get out all over the place. So, but you will have those before we send any letters out.
Thank you for compiling the data.
You're welcome. It was, I hope so. I think so as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
All right, up next, we have public art proposal for the remainder of the city-owned land near Park Circle.
I'm the only person that stands between you and MML, so we'll do this. So when we approved the Clara Barton Memorial, we indicated that we wanted to keep working on that area of city-owned property near Park Circle to see what else we could put in there. We had our landscape architect put together a couple of different concepts. This particular concept that it's shown in your packet was endorsed by the Public Art Commission and artist Toby Mendez because he obviously has a lot of interest in this with the Clara Barton Monument. It creates kind of two smaller outdoor rooms in that area, so to speak, that you could create some additional art in that area. So I guess I really was just wanted to check in with you to see what process you want to use to go from here on to try to make something happen down here. I'd kind of like to call your attention to in the document that I gave you, there's kind of the architect's thought process on how they put some of this together. But there's this page in here that of what we call firsts. And on there is the bookmobile, the Dagmar car, the trolleys, the chemistry sets that were made in Hagerstown during the mid-1900s. Things like that that are unique to Hagerstown that we were kind of the first at. Clara Barton was, I'm told, the first triage nurse to be on the battlefield. So this could be a array of firsts for our community, would be one idea. So anyhow, I guess what I'd like to know is, are we ready just to do a call for artists and give them this page of firsts and say, hey, give us some proposals on art like this? Or do we want to do what I proposed in the memo and have more of a public input time, find out what people want to have happen there, and then do a call based on their input? We can do it either way.
I mean, obviously for me, and I feel like I said this even at the inception of the cultural trail, like there are a lot of notable things, of Hagerstown's history that I felt, and please don't get me wrong, I like the abstract, big orange sculpture and other things, but I feel like we're missing a bit of the boat in expressing in some artistic way some of the really cool historical things that represent Hagerstown. You know, like this chem set that was made, you know, the first really commercial sort of toy chemistry set that was made in the US. You know, the various vehicles, you know, the Dagmar made, it wasn't, you know, just one. Certainly, you know, the trolley system and the bookmobile, it's just, even the one, and there's the one that I said that isn't on here, you know, that when I saw the old postcard, it said 5 Mills Park, which used to be a name for City Park because there were 5 mills, and if you go out there, you see they're actually in parts of Park Circle. I just think that some of those things at some point, whether it's this space or in the spaces in and around this rather longer arena of the cultural trail that we've made, you know, even when you guys had your tour today, that's gonna stretch. And I just think that there's some of these stories that you can tell in a more artistic, interpretive fashion, and frankly, an interactive fashion, just like Toby explained how the Claire Barton would be sort of interactive and explanatory. I think we need to figure out a way to incorporate that, whether it's in this space or in other spaces we've identified that are gonna become green spaces, you know, along that. I think that we should have this list of things, and the arts community should come up with ways to sort of,
Make that happen.
yeah, encourage us how that happens. I'm not the artist, but I'm sure that there are folks out there that you know, can do that.
Do you think we want to get community input on this? Or
Yes, I'm always down for getting feedback.
I mean, I always thought it was cool. The gentleman lived down the street, Eddie, you know, he's 90, and so we talk all the time, and he calls these buildings names that I have no idea what they are, but they were, a lot of them, manufacturing buildings, or retail buildings that had things, and I always thought it'd be cool if you could walk around town. I know this is crazy, but have literally like the Dagmar like mounted on the side of the building where the Dagmar was made, and these different buildings would have these different interpretive features, you know, with this uplighting, much like Mike did with the building on the corner that kind of, you know, says, hey, you know, here's what this building was known for, because I think that's some of that story that, you know, people keep saying, oh, you want downtown to be like it was. It's not going to happen, but we can definitely make it artistically, to some degree, have that vibe about it. He will not come to a meeting. He's watching right now, but he won't.
They're being personally summoned to the meeting.
So we'd have public input, we'd get some themes from that, then we would do a call, then we would apply for a public art across Maryland grant like we used for the mural that was dedicated today, and then we would move forward with getting it made.
And I definitely don't want us to like cram it all into one triangle, you know, like I think that there are these things that,
But you can
know,
definitely put some things
you
there.
know, that each of us have heard about that I think would be cool.
Okay. I think that's what I needed to know.
Thank you. And then vending machines.
So we, as staff, have noticed an uptick in these. You may have as well as you go around the city. There's a lot of TikTok videos out there that talk about how much money you can make with vending machines. So we think maybe that might be part of the driver of this. We know there's at least a dozen locations out there that have these. We gave you some samples of them in these pictures. We just wanted to raise the issue with you and find out if you wanted to, one, just ignore that and let people continue to do what they're doing. Two, ban them in some fashion or ban any new ones. Or three, if we wanted to license them in some fashion. So right now, if somebody wants to do some sort of a permanent improvement in the public right of way, and that's what we're talking about here, is the street right of way of the city, not on private property. This is where they're actually using city property. If they want to do a permanent structure, like build a stoop or a handicap ramp, we give them a license. For sales such as the cafes down here and some of the other sale activity that happens on the street, like yard sale kind of things, those are licensed. And we could do a similar type of license for this. But I think today I just wanted to find out if there's any appetite for doing anything about them, and if so, then we can move forward with whatever you decide. So we did some research, I'll just throw out there yet. Through MML, they were terrific and helped us a lot with this issue, as they always do. And other communities are all over the place on this. Some have banned them completely. A lot of them require some sort of a license, and then many more don't require any regulation. So they basically let people do what they want to do in the right of way like that with these vending machines. So with that, I guess, whatever feedback you'd like to give me.
I like the Salisbury dust.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I like the Salisbury dust.
I just have an insurance question, because, you know, that's the way my brain works. Since it's on city property, if something were to happen, are we liable for it?
Not sure I'm the best person to answer that question.
I mean, I think that's a question, I think that's a question that we should ask. I mean, like the storm the other day, I mean, I know the likelihood of a vending machine blowing over is probably pretty low, but what if it didn't hit somebody? It's on our property, are we liable for that, or is the store that owns the vending machine?
What's their stored on the vending machine? That's
On
their
our
person.
property?
You're the insurance agent, what would you do?
But I feel like the more we
I'm not a
officially
city insurance
recognize it,
agent.
the more that becomes ours.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know what I mean?
So you're telling me shut up?
No, I just feel like the more we acknowledge it, the more it becomes our response. So, yeah, I don't know, it's just,
It's theirs.
No, I agree, I mean, and it's given these pictures that you presented to us.
So do
You know, you pass the one down on 340 on Potomac Street, I pass that.
Yeah.
I don't even pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Been there
Wallpaper.
so long. It's back so far.
Locust Point's been there forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think they're part of the landscape.
Okay.
Would there be any individual, like ATMs? An ATM in the middle of Locust and North Avenue, is that something that would be necessary? Or an ATM, you know, on the corner of Summit and Howard?
I think they're totally different animals.
But that's part of what was included in this.
Yeah.
Well, that's a corn problem, and it sits way back, some of them, I'm not sure that's their problem.
What happens
Yeah.
has one too, about leaving it sits way back as well.
But, I mean, I guess as long as it doesn't obstruct ADA requirements of our sidewalks.
Yeah, none of
Yeah.
these
Because
do.
that's, yeah.
We have,
As long as.
Yeah.
I think that would be.
Just trying to look at the public safety side of that also.
Right.
So you guys got no restrictions?
I say no.
That's where I'm at.
Okay.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Enjoy your night.
City administrator.
I'll be here at work at
You know why I put times on those agendas? Yeah, Mayor, just a few things. City Park, starting up again with music and entertainment. Wednesday night, City Park Band shows a gospel concert, starts at 7. Also, Friday night is starting a movie night in City Park, Spider-Man No Way Home, excellent movie. Starts at dusk. Pre-movie activities begin at 7. Let's see, Friday night, Music in the Square at 5 p.m. The entertainment is Karen Collins and the Back Road Band, Contemporary Country. That starts at 5:30, weather permitting. At Fairgrounds Park this weekend, we have community yard sale, 7 to 2. All 72 stalls have been rented, so that should be a good time. And being that we don't meet next week for various reasons, Juneteenth is Friday, June 17th, and Saturday, June 18th in University Plaza. And then it moves to Bridge of Life Church on the 19th, and that's sponsored by the Dolman Black Heritage Museum. And also Saturday night is the Cycling Criterium in downtown held by Antietam Velo. That's 3 to 9, so it will be a busy weekend that weekend. Also, one more thing, Saturday, June 18th, Fishing Frenzy at Pangbourne Park. So that's back. That is back again. And just one last thing I would say, Farmers Market started in University Plaza as an outdoor venue last Saturday. It started out very small. We knew it was going to start out very small. We knew that there would be some resistance to the whole change from the inside to the outside. Totally understood that. I appreciate everybody that came down to University Plaza. It will get bigger, it will get better, it will be more diverse as far as entertainment and vendors. And hang in there. We've got a long summer and fall, and the outdoor market is going to be very successful. And thank Kathleen Miller and our newest employee, Brittany Arizmendi, for putting that together. And just stay tuned. It's going to get much bigger and much better as we go on. That's it for me. Thanks.
Councilmember Bashar.
I'm gonna go first because I have to roll. Just wanted to thank all of the teachers and administrators. The school year here is now complete. I think that they did a great job getting things back to normal, what was otherwise not normal for the past 2.5 years. So wish them all a safe and happy summer as well as the kids.
See.
Go save the water.
Councilmember Martinez.
I just want to say that Horizon Goodwill, in partnership with Hagerstown Police Department, Bester Community of Hope, State of Maryland Juvenile Services, CASA, and the Washington County Health Department did an amazing job with their last day of Back to School Bash on the corner of North Jonathan and Church Street. It was amazing, and they actually had, as of 4/15, they had 252 people signed in that came through and got food and got services and all that good stuff. So it was amazing. Good job.
That's awesome. Councilmember Burnett.
I just want to say congratulations to all the graduates from elementary school all the way through high school, and a special shout out to Jonathan Hager's elementary 5th grade class that was promoted to 6th grade today, and woohoo, Shyla, and that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Burchett. I just want to thank everyone who came downtown Hagerstown last Thursday for the Investor Roundtable that the Greater Hagerstown Committee held. Jill did an awesome presentation. There was a lot of excitement about the city of Hagerstown going on. So thanks to everyone who attended that. And congratulations to the 18 police officers who graduated from the police academy on Friday night. That's a pretty big class. 4 of them are coming here, 6 to the county, and the other 8 to different jurisdictions around us. So much needed additions to our police force. And in addition to the Schools Out Bash that happened today, this Saturday, Washington Goes Purple, in partnership with Envy and Horizon Goodwill, is having a dance at Horizon Goodwill on Prospect Street from 6 to 9. So it's a safe, sober environment to bring your kids. We're gonna have selfie stations. Of course, we're gonna have selfie stations, right? And a DJ and a photographer, and it'll be a good time. So if you have kids, bring your kids. And I echo what you said, except pray for me, because I have a high schooler now.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to all the kids and teachers. Hope everyone has a safe summer. That, we're adjourned.
Yes.
the city and sort of your vision of where the city's headed from your perspective.
Sure. So, I am the economic development specialist for the city. So I focus mostly on our Invest Hagerstown programs in general, which we'll get into a little bit later, as well as assisting the attraction, retention, and basically anything that our existing businesses need as well. And that can also include our small businesses if we need to find the space in the downtown or surrounding areas. If there is any property owners who need to find businesses to fill those spaces, and a wide variety of other items as well. I work alongside Doug Reese, our business development specialist, and we try to kind of divide things out. I'm on the micro side of business, he's on the more on the macro side as well.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we've done the job duties to date.
Okay.
But we just kind of help out either way. With the Invest Hagerstown programs in particular, I help lead the review committee that basically does all the intake of the applications, review them, make sure they are nice, wrapped up in a bow, and ready to be reviewed by everyone. And then we go ahead and take our comments, see what we can do to get them approved, and make sure that some of these projects that are coming forward to us materialize and everything.
What's your, what's been your experience in dealing with that program? Because it looks like, from a numbers standpoint, over the last number of years, it's just grown each and every year in terms of demand. That has to be a blessing and a curse to some degree.
Yes, there have been a number of projects that we have received just this fiscal year alone that we had to tell them to hold off and apply July 1st once the next fiscal year begins because we ran out of funds, essentially. And even with opening up the funding levels to help cross-apply funds to different projects, there's still a shortfall when it comes to just the overall demand that's coming into play. And it's kind of crazy when it comes to it. I mean, you'll hear a lot of people on Facebook especially, they're saying nothing's happening in downtown, nothing's happening in Hagerstown. You're getting a lot of negativity, but there's a lot that's going on behind the scene that, yes, there's some stuff that we can share. Unfortunately, there's some stuff that our hands are tied in that regards. But there's a lot happening, and especially right now with, what was that, $12.3 million worth of investment just out of city funds of $862,000. Yeah. That's quite a bit of return on investment for these.
For sure.
For sure. And once some of these projects come online, we're going to be seeing more retail spaces for business to grow into. We're going to be seeing more apartments, market rate luxury apartments at that too. That are coming into play for people to move into the downtown. You're going to have your people who are working from home looking for those kind of amenities. Lately, that's what the market's looking into, having that. And from there, we just need to, excuse me, just bring in the amenities to help keep them into the downtown area too. And we got a couple of things that are going in the process as well that's going to help tap onto that. So just keep your eyes peeled when it comes to all of that soon.
Yeah, I know I've heard your name mentioned favorably, along with Doug's,
I hope so.
by some of the developers and investors in and around Hagerstown and their experiences with you and Doug in particular. How is it that you guys work together to match investors up with properties? What type of insight, I guess is my question, do you provide to those particular investors? Because they might have their eye on a certain property, but you might have a little perspective that you're like, well, that might not be the perfect match. So how do you sort of approach that?
Yeah, so the first thing we do whenever we get in touch with any new or existing investor, or business in general for that matter, is we need to find out what their needs are. We need to know how much space they're looking for, what kind of property they're looking for, what area of town, things along those lines. And of course, price point as well, because that can fluctuate depending as to where you're looking at or what you're looking at for that matter. Some people might be looking for a shell-ready building where they can go ahead and set up their business and just do some minor modifications. Other people might be looking for overall redevelopment of a property.
Okay.
And perfect example is the Updegraft building over at 55 West Washington Street. That is a $4.1 million redevelopment that's currently going on. That's 21 apartments out of the 36 that I had mentioned earlier. That was a significant investment that fit all their needs, and they're looking at that coming online the early next year, early 2023. So just getting the overall understanding as to what they are looking for and what their overall concept is and how we can best match that up with what we are aware of from there and try and make more inlays into current property owners, prospective property owners as well to see what kind of inventory might be coming into play sooner, later, or what have you.
I try to frame my questions a lot when I think about these as a resident of Hagerstown. So what does something like Invest Hagerstown mean for me, the overall program? And I'm sure it depends on how I'm coming at that program, whether I'm a homeowner, a business owner. But can you provide some of the highlights of the Invest Hagerstown program, kind of give a thumbnail sketch overall?
Sure. So as a city resident, so it's what is your tax dollars doing for you? So it's a portion of percentage of overall property taxes that are being put onto this, mostly when it comes to rental properties, for example, that are funding the Invest Hagerstown program. Sorry.
You need some water?
I'm fine for now.
Okay. I can get Nancy in here. I believe she could allocate some to you.
So when it comes to your tax dollars, it's always the question of what is that doing for me?
Right, exactly.
And, well, for particular, this is helping a small business being able to fit out their shop and get in there and get open. This is helping the facade of a building that might be crumbling or might need some TLC, help beautify it so you're walking down the street and it's something that pops right out to you.
Okay.
Adding a sign grant to that now is going to help you walk down the street and actually know what every single business that's going to be in the downtown, the Main Street area in particular when it comes to facade grant come into play. Our city center, we have big buildings in Hagerstown.
Yeah.
And that's something that cannot be understated. Whereas other cities, for example, there's a lot of smaller buildings here or there. Hagerstown has a lot of our original buildings from years ago that they're no longer functioning as a hotel or a giant manufacturing office. So it costs quite a bit of money to redevelop those into something that people are using now, such as apartments and first floor retail. So that is what those dollars are putting into play. And then the homeownership program, which we went ahead and basically revamped earlier this year, help streamline the process of someone who's looking to buy a home, especially a first-time home buyer or current renter, lower the cost of barriers when it comes to a down payment or closing costs that they need to take care of. So this is all kinds of things that are putting those tax dollars that someone might be paying or the property owners or anything along those lines to really give back into the community.
How is the amount of money in the program determined? Because now we're up to a grand total, I believe, of $855,000 for fiscal year '23. So how is that determined?
It's a fraction of a percent. I wish I had the...
Oh, I'm sorry, I asked. I need my big calculator.
I wish I had the actual framework when the program was first created.
Which
but
was what, FY '14, is that correct?
So it's existed in one way or another in FY '13, and then it got revamped
Okay.
in FY '19.
Okay, all right.
To the Invest Hagerstown program that we know it is today.
Right,
Previously, before that was the First Start program that some people might have heard back and forth. So, for example, rental properties, whenever they sign up for the rental licensing program, there is a tax structure and fee that they have to pay into. I believe it's like 7 cents per square foot of a rental property or rental unit or rental property that helps fund this program.
All right.
And as property values go up, as the state determines, that fluctuates the amount of funding that gets put into this program in particular.
Right. And I guess what I'm really trying to get at with that is not only, yes, how is it funded, but why is it that we, as a city, just can't, like, make it any number we want based on the amount of demand that we receive?
Right. And that is just particularly for that. Now, there are some funds that the city does help allocate for other programs, but of course that means taking money away from another program, another service in general. And we definitely don't want to defund our water system right now as we're seeing greater use. We don't want to defund our police department when they're already having problems hiring and everything along those lines. Now, if there's any additional funds that can be allocated towards that, which is great, but otherwise we can put those towards other major projects such as the Hagerstown Fieldhouse or the parking deck that we're seeing over on Antietam Street.
Yeah.
That's going to bring significant economic driver, significant tourism in general to Hagerstown and help supplement these programs that's already in place.
I know you don't want to play favorites in any way, so maybe this is an unfair question to some degree, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'll put you on the spot a little bit. I mean, what are you most excited about right now? Either something that's already happened or something that's in the works that you can talk about?
So there's two projects in particular that I'm probably most excited for. And one of them is probably going to be contentious when it comes to the Market House property and the brewery that's coming in over there. That's going to be a triple play. So you're talking about winery, cidery, brewery, as well as distillery, with tasting room and restaurants in there. It's going to be a great downtown amenity, I think, that's really going to help bring people into the downtown in general.
Because that's really a destination for people who
Exactly.
enjoy that type of venue, that type of amenity, correct?
Exactly, and they're also planning on having a number of events for the community too. So you're talking food truck events, musical events, basically everything under the sun in this case. The Hub City Brewing, which is going to be the entity that owns the property, is also planning on biking events and everything else in the area too. So this is just not only going to be one specific subject as well, but also an overall community aspect and community center, essentially, when it comes to it, all this, once everything's said and done. Another one that I'm super excited for, too, is over on Pennsylvania Avenue, the old Fairchild building. So Dylan Krasonsky, I can never pronounce his last name correctly. He's doing a massive redevelopment of that property, and this is also looking to become a destination place, too. With the current tenants that we're hearing as well, some people that we're bringing over to him and he's bringing himself, is going to be another, we're looking at a secondary, a primary space for his business that he's moving from Williamsport over to here. And we're looking at a number of recreation tenants as well. It's going to be a nice aspect for that area too. Now, of course, everything's still in early stages with they haven't even finished their phase one yet, but once everything does come online, I think that's really going to be a great addition to that neighborhood.
Should people be intimidated or even worried about the fact that there is so much demand for the Invest Hagerstown funding? I mean, should they be deterred when it comes to applying? I mean, how do you advise them if someone calls you and they give you some idea of what they're looking to do and it fits into the program, but even in the back of your mind, you're like, wow, yeah, I mean, the demand is so great right now. So, I mean, should that even be a concern, or should people just go ahead and contact you and get the ball rolling as much as you can at this point?
So definitely contact us. I mean, we are here to help in general when it comes to understanding what your overall project is, what your overall goal is, and how we as a city can help bring you to that end spot. Now, I do always tell people, especially when we are running low on funds, that it is a first come, first serve review. So if you go ahead and get everything in late, there might be someone who beats you out, but we need to try and get you rolling first so we can even get to that point. Especially if towards the end of the fiscal year, if mayor and council allow us to open the funding levels again and cross-apply funding, then that brings open another opportunity that we might be able to fit someone else into.
Yeah.
So it's never something that someone should be discouraged from even applying, because yes, the worst that can happen is no, but the best thing that can happen is, for using Citywide, for example, that could be $25,000 you get back to you
Right.
At the completion of your project. So is that enough to really entice you to want to get this going, so you're not out all that money instead?
Yeah, and it seems like, the last couple of years anyway, when gotten to the end of a fiscal year and you've seen that there's some money left in one bucket or another, council's certainly been accommodating enough to say, yeah, go ahead and move that over here and use that for this because there's a need there. So I think, collectively, worked very well between DCED and the council in the last couple of years anyway.
Yeah, and when I have come forth to mayor and council, they've been very open to every single suggestion that I've had to date. They've provided their feedback, of course, and we've been using it to incorporate things. We incorporate community feedback as we hear it. We reach out to our developers. We take even Facebook comments that we see on there, we try to take that.
Facebook comments.
Even Facebook comments. We're trying to get all that kind of feedback for how we can improve anything.
Right.
Whether it is our Invest Hagerstown programs, any kind of services that we offer to the community in general. We're wrapping up our Spring Sprouts program, which is not an Invest Hagerstown grant, but it's a supplemental economic development incentive that we use to help our downtown businesses with whether it's marketing or just overall purchases that they don't typically budget for.
Yeah.
So that just helps supplement things.
How did it feel in general this afternoon to get such a positive review from the council? I mean, you were bringing a pretty big packet of material before them, and they're just like, yeah, hey, we love everything we're hearing.
I'll admit I was expecting a lot of questions, but or feedback in general, but they were very in line with everything that I brought forth to them, and I'm excited to see what comes next.
And you've mentioned a lot of things here. I mean, we've talked about Invest Hagerstown. We kind of danced around it. We didn't get too deep in the water. You mentioned Spring Sprouts. There are other things going on. So if people want to find out more about not just Invest Hagerstown, but even beyond that, Department of Community and Economic Development. You mentioned your partner in crime, that is good crime, in Doug Reeser. I mean, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys and kind of, get questions answered and to move things forward if people have some idea of what they want to do?
Sure. So the first thing that they can do is they have any kind of idea that what they want to do. They can go ahead and shoot an email to our general inbox, dced@hagerstownmd.org. They can also go ahead and give us a call as well, or they can even go on the website, hagerstownmd.org/doing business.
Okay.
That is going to be the website that they can go ahead and head to, and there's a lot of self-service options on there as well with all the information that we have for our program guidelines, applications for Invest Hagerstown, the other programs and services that we offer in general, such as our grand openings that we are knocking out of the park lately.
Yeah, one on top of another.
Yes, and we have more planned too.
More to come, so stay
Yes.
tuned. Yeah.
So if there's any kind of question that someone has, they can of course go to the website and they might be able to answer the question themselves, or they can just reach out to us directly. We are also located on the second floor of 14 North Potomac Street, the Elizabeth Hager Center. We take walk-in clients all the time, so if someone has any kind of questions, they're more than welcome to drop in and we'll help the best we can.
Well, Chris, thanks for your time today. I certainly appreciate it. As I said, I think we've only scraped the surface of what you can help people with. And, again, just generating more excitement in Hagerstown through true, tangible investment. I think, that's the key to it. I mean, you can always yell from the hilltops that, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. But I think when the dollars reflect that, especially when tax dollars are allocated to make, things better within the city, everybody feels pretty good about that. So certainly appreciate what you've been doing on that front.
No, but thank you so much for having me. And I mean, once again, just touching back on that number, $12.3 million in investment just this fiscal year alone.
Yep.
Not including the last couple of fiscal years,
Right.
not including the one to come.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of changes coming soon, good changes.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, and hope to have you back on again soon, and we'll talk more about those things in the future.
Sounds perfect.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for watching. I'll see you next time on Council Wrap. For now, that is a wrap.
Thank you.